Welcome to the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast, where we share real-life experiences for successful Caribbean property entrepreneurs. Learn about their successes, challenges, and strategies to help you create your plan for financial freedom. Now let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast, episode 5. We want to thank you once again for sharing, listening, and the support has been tremendous. We're available on all major podcast platforms, as well as all major social media websites, as well as our own website, CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com. The last 4 podcasts have been amazing. So much so we've gotten feedback from not only the Caribbean, but actually from North America and the UK, and all from Caribbean nationals. It is precisely because of that connection that we have our next guest. Ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is a St. Lucia national who migrated to the US almost 3 decades or more than 3 decades ago. And lo and behold, he's a property investor as well. But more than that, as you will see, he is also a podcast personality, among a super athlete, among many other things. So I'd like to introduce to you our next guest, Mr. Martin Spencer. Welcome, Martin, to the podcast.
It's such a pleasure. It is such a pleasure. Like I said, it's such a small world that you're in St. Lucia, I'm in Tampa, Florida, and we can communicate so effectively. But it's a pleasure. I really enjoyed looking forward to this day. Speaking of someone of similar mindset.
It's just so coincidental that we put out this podcast and we connect with so many different people, so many like-minded individuals, both people who want to get in the property ladder, as well as seasoned people like yourself who've almost done it all and have a story to tell. And that's exactly why we have the podcast. Perhaps for our viewers, tell us a little bit about yourself, including the Think Tank podcast, and then your background before getting into property.
Well, I left St. Lucia in 1971 when I was just about 17, going to 18. And I was I don't know if you probably weren't even born yet, but I was the fastest kid in St. Lucia when I left. I got a track and field scholarship pushed by a good friend of mine, Carlisle Marshall. He was also a sprinter. I'm a sprinter. I consider myself an old Usain Bolt right now, right? But at the time, I was a sprinter. So I went to the United States on the track and field school in 1971, went to junior college, went to University of Nevada, Reno, got my bachelor's degree, got my master's degree, and I've never worked for anybody. Okay, I repeat that. I've never worked for anyone. I went straight into property development, buying and flipping houses. I bought my first house at 22, and I've never looked back. I've been
Tell us
through
about
every
that journey.
phase of it. Yes.
Why did you get into property development in the first place?
Well, I've always been a student of learning. I always wanted to learn. I always wanted to, whenever I had opportunity, I always looked for being kid from the islands, didn't have much opportunity in St. Lucia growing up. But when I went to the States, opportunity was abound. And I say, if anybody can do it, I can. And I had great role models. My dad, my uncle, which is George Theophilus Fix, my uncle in the Bahamas, Dennis Theophilus, he's a surveyor. My uncle, who died several years ago, he was a medical doctor in New York. I had attorneys. I had a whole plethora of people around me who were role models and guided me, not knowing that what they were doing, but I just looked up to them. And I always said that if they can do it, I can do it also. So when I migrated to the US, I looked at opportunity, and one of my good friends was involved in property development. He was doing what we call flipping. You buy a house, you fix it, and you sell it. And he always said to me, you only make money in real estate, not when you sell. You make money when you buy. And I heard you say that a couple of times on your podcast, right? You make money when you buy. So I adopted that mindset. And there's 2 things that I do. If somebody calls me, Martin, I have a property for sale. What's the asking price? How much do you think it will cost to fix up? And what's the ARV, the after repair value? The after repair value is okay. but the selling price and then the cost to fix them, these two must equal to 60% of the after repair value. Then you're in the chips. Because
You
unlike
always have
St.
a
Lucia,
40% profit margin.
right, exactly. So you have a little room for error because in this business things don't always go right. I don't care how much you plan, things will fall through the cracks through no fault of yours. So consequently, I was always looking at that mindset of if I can buy, fix, and flip. Now the other equation that I didn't have a lot of the times, I didn't have the money, but that didn't stop me. Again, by reading books and going to seminars and real estate seminars, they always said if you didn't, it's better to have half a loaf than no loaf at all. So I would borrow the money from somebody for the 20% down. So if I needed to buy something for 100,000, I would borrow the 20,000 so I have skin in the game. So then I would buy the property and then share the profits. So if I did that, when I did that for three times, let's say we made 40,000 on each deal. So I paid back my debts, kept what I had, and split the profits with my partner. Now I had $20,000 of my own with no money going in, using what you call OPM, other people's money. Okay. But that doesn't mean you use it, but you paid him back for what you used. So I did that three times. And after the third time, I amassed 20 grand, 20 grand, 20 grand. So now I had my own working capital. So I didn't need to borrow from anybody or private investors anymore. And that started my journey. And I never looked back.
How difficult was it getting that partner from the beginning? Because a lot of our listeners, say, that's the start. Somebody had an edge, you had a friend, you had a relative. How difficult, how easy was it to get that first person to help you out, to partner with you?
Again, being a learned guy, and I'm always looking for opportunity. My roommate in college was what you call a trust fund baby. In America, I don't know if we have them in the islands, but rich parents always put a trust fund for their child when the child is born. When the child is born, they put aside maybe 20, 30, 40,000 in an account and in a trust account that nobody can touch until that child alone, until that child is 18. So he became a trust fund baby, and I wasn't privy to how much he had, but he was anxious to know what I was doing because I would take him with me to my seminars just to learn. So he became my business partner, and we did 3 or 4 deals together using his money as seed capital. But we split the profits. Then he went on his way. We graduated with his degrees. He went his way. I went my way. But it left me. That was still in college. It left me with a little cash flow, a little 20 grand, 20 grand, 20 grand, and it adds up. So I bought my first house, and I never forget, in Oakland, California. Up to this day, I still remember that. I lived in it while I repaired it. Okay, I was single, brought 1 or 2 guys with me, and I lived in it, sold it, bought another one, and it's rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
That first house, you didn't have another full-time job. Your full-time job was actually flipping property. So that
Yes,
first house, you had a deposit, and in that time and in that jurisdiction, that market, you were able to get a mortgage even without having a full-time job or rental income.
yes, yeah. Well, in the states, when we talk about hard money, hard money is such where you don't need a job. You have to show the ability to repay, and it's leveraged by a first deed. So if you don't pay within 6 months, then you lose the property, you lose your investment. So it's incumbent on you to do the right thing. And if you're in business, you have to pay your investors back. So consequently, it's a little different from the islands where you have to have a job where it's deducted from your salary. It's basically on good faith, but you're coming up with 20% down.
In terms of
Yeah,
flipping, what was your basic strategy? What were you looking for? How did you choose, which house to buy? I know you did say that the deposit plus the cost of repair, must not be more than 60% of what you plan to sell it for. What were some of the things
what
that
they
you
call
look
the
for when
ARV.
choosing a house to flip?
Right. Well, I would look at the worst house in the best neighborhood. If I go down the street, like what I tell you, when we do what I do even today, we do driving for dollars. I drive around good neighborhoods looking for property that's abandoned. Okay, property with grass growing tall, broken windows, just whatever stuff that's going on with it. And I research it. I do what I call a skip trace. I find who the owner is. I find out their number. Most times the owner is dead, or it's in probate, or something going on. And you figure, and then you talk to the neighbors. Neighbors tell you a lot. Neighbors will say, "Well, yeah, that property's been vacant for the last 4 years, and the kids don't want it. The family doesn't want anything to do with it. They don't want to repair it. Bang, bingo, pot of gold." I remember driving properties, and when I take my wife with me sometime, and I said to her, "Honey, that's a target. That's one of my deals I'm going to buy." She said, "That's an ugly house, but that's where the money is in ugly houses." Okay, and so I just, and after many years of doing it, you become very good at it, And then I migrated into land, but anyway, that's how I started.
After the first set of flips, did you ever go into multifamily? Because for me, I always think of scalability. So
Right.
if I do one, how much more would it cost me to do one and a half, a second floor, a third floor? What was the thinking then? And tell us, beyond the flips, what other strategies you use, and what are some of the other things that you accomplished in that real estate growth phase of your career?
Well, the one of the things, because the flipping was so easy and there were so many, I didn't have the time to go into multifamily. If I had to do it all over again, yes, I would invest more in multifamily. But you, there's several phases of real estate in the U.S. You have what you call wholesaling. For example, I can put a property under contract today and never take title to it or never take ownership. And on the contract of sale, I put a clause in there that I have the right to sell it to another investor. So, for case in point, if I bought a property for, let's say again, 100,000, it was worth 200,000. I buy it at a severe discount, and it needs repairs. I now would flip it to you for 120 grand, 120,000, without doing anything to it. I leave room enough for you to repair it and make your money. But I would make $20,000 in the space of a week to 2 days, 3 days, a week. Sometimes 10, sometimes it all depends on negotiation. But the bottom line, to make it attractive, I have to leave enough meat on the bone for you to see and to pay me that 20 grand. But I did the work to get the property, so I'm rewarded for that. You are rewarded by repairing it and then selling it or holding on to it if you want to as a rental.
And how complicated is the legal process for that? You under contract, you have the property under contract with your deposit. Without even closing the
Right,
mortgage, you're able to flip it on. How- Explain that process to us, just in just very broad, high level, the legal,
right.
I guess,
It's
process
a
there.
yeah. It's a little. It's not sophisticated because if I put a property under contract today, I'm telling you that in the next 30 days for the 100,000, I don't have to give you any money. That's called wholesaling. It's a contract between two people. I'm telling you, within 30 days, you'll get your money. You'll get your 100,000. We know it needs repair, so it doesn't matter what I do. I may give you $200, 500, whatever we agree upon. But it's just good faith. I don't have to come up with 10% or 5 because I'm not physically buying. I'm putting it on a contract. Now I sell the contract to another investor for a fee, a flat fee. Now he in turn now fixes the property and then gets the 60 or 70. He makes more money than I do, but I can do 3 or 4 of these a month as long as I have the resources to find them. So that's another good aspect where you can make money in real estate with no money in hand, no big money. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, number one, you can flip the regular flip, you buy, you repair, and you sell. You wholesale, put it on a contract, you sell the contract, you move on to the next one. The third one is dealing one-on-one with what I would say with homeowners who are losing property in divorce and they lost their jobs. You can take over their mortgage subject. It's called a subject to. So you buy the property subject to the existing liens on it, the existing loan. You give them what you call cash for keys. You may give them $5,000 so they can find another property. They want to get out. So you have to have a good heart also. So you give a little bit, but you get a lot more from them. So you get cash for keys, you get the property with their mortgage on it intact. You bring it current, and that's a legal process also, because you can also record the deed in your name with the mortgage or the loan still in their name. So there's lots of creativity in America, lots of creativity, you know.
I'm thinking of throughout this whole process, you in the US, you migrated. What would you say are some of your biggest challenges you had as a Caribbean national or immigrant while you're going through that real estate journey?
Well, I didn't have any challenges to say, because I always knew that I have to surround myself with the right people. I surrounded myself with people with money, period. It may sound cynical or whatever, but you have to surround yourself, and you make sure that your investors are well compensated. Because if you have money, if you have $1 million in the bank, and the bank right now, the bank is paying people 1%. If I come along and I tell you, can I borrow 100,000 and I'm going to pay you 6%, 7%, 8% for 6 months, you would be a fool not to listen. And it's backed up by I give you a first what I call a first deed on the property. So if I default, you get the property. So you have, it's like a bank. The bank's loaning me money, and they have a first lien on the property. If something happens, they take the property. Same thing as a private investor. And in here we call them hard money hard money lenders, because it's hard money. It's high interest. For example, if I bought up the first property I borrowed 60,000 hard money. They charge me what they call points. Points are 1% of the value of what I'm paying, or what I borrow. So if I borrow 60,000, they charge me 3 points. That's 3,000 just for the right to borrow. Then they charge me a monthly interest. Okay, but being smarter than the average person, and I pride myself in saying that, I looked at, okay, if I borrowed 60,000 and I paid the interest, I paid the points, and I was still able to make a profit after all of that and pay my investor back and still make minimum $20,000, I would do it all day long. Because it's using OPM, the strategy of other people's money. So that's why I went. The first one I did, and as you build a relationship with your investors or people around you, they trust you more, and consequently, your fees come down because you realize you're now a proven commodity. Okay, I can go back to that same well. I've been to one gentleman in the last 15 years and borrowed almost $9 million from him. It's like a bank. Okay, but that's his business model. He loans money to investors like me. We go to him, we borrow short term for 6 months. But every house that I flipped, I made sure that my schedule was 90 days, no more than 90 days, 3 months.
Tell us about
Yes,
the team that goes in and does the refurb. How often you use them, or how do you get those people? Is it over time? Do you have any Caribbean immigrants in that team as well? Tell us about managing that process, because in this case, time is really money for true, because you are on the
yes,
clock to pay that money back. How do you
that's
go
right.
about that
Time.
process in choosing that team? And I want to hear about your
Mhm.
marketing as well, marketing of the property
Right,
after all that's done.
right. What I again surrounding myself with the right people. Most of my investors, know they have people that they know. So I always ask for referrals. And it's fortunate that, not unfortunate, I don't see very many Caribbean nationals where I am in Tampa or where I was in Georgia in that field. Most people have a 9 to 5 jobs, and that's the career. But the Mexican nationals from Mexico, these are hardworking men and women, and they're dedicated. They live together. They're here for a mission. So I would always get a Mexican crew, a Spanish crew, and I found them to be very dedicated, paid them well, and for example, they didn't work 9 to 5. If we had a job to do, and they said we had to tile an entire floor, they wouldn't say, "Oh, it's 5 o'clock, gotta go." No, got if they have to work till 9 o'clock at night to finish it, that's what we did. So we finished the job, finished the project. They may be off for the next 2 or 3 days, but we took a project and we completed it. We would complete the whole tiling, or spray paint inside of the house, inside and out, or put a roof on. They would go until it's done. So you had to have a crew, and then where we work together. So that's what I did. I
On the
kept my
marketing.
cool. The marketing, and that's a very good point. By the time I bought the house, what I would do, I would pre-market it. I would call three or four of my real estate friends, not friends, well, associates, and said, I've got this house coming on the market. It's gonna have tile, it's gonna be color in green or blue or whatever. I would tell them everything that's going to be in the house and to pre-market it. So by the time the house is completed, the house has been marketed for the last 30 or 45 days, and I had offers. Then I would offer to pay the closing costs, give incentives. Because if I was going to make 40,000 on a house and I paid your closing costs to the bank or for 5,000, it was incumbent on me to make sure that I closed that deal quickly. So I give you an incentive to buy. So if you had to come up with 5,000 for the legal costs, I would pay that. Okay. And it's a little trick in the game. You would pay that, but you'd up the price by 5,000. Okay. You know, but it's all perception. It's all perception.
In terms of a Caribbean national, so let's say I didn't move maybe at 6, I move at 25, and I'm
Hmm.
in a full time job, and I want to get in the property ladder, probably to help me get to my financial freedom goal. What kind of advice you would have for them? How would you encourage them? You know, where do they start? What should they be thinking of? Um, Tell us about that your perspective on that.
Right. Right. Well, I would say the model of the path that I chose. I've been married for 20 years to my wife now, my current wife. And in the first 10 years that we were married, we moved 10 times. And she always said, honey, when can we stop? But every time I moved, I was making money. I would buy the house, I would live in it. And I was younger then, so I physically did a lot of the work myself. I can lay hardwood floors, I don't do it now, but I taught myself through working along with my guys. I learned how to do it. I can change a lock, I can change the locks, I can change a window. I can do all of those things. So while I lived there with her, while I was living with her, we just fixed the house up together. So consequently, every time I did the house in 6 months, I would sell it because I wasn't paying any mortgage. I was not paying rent. I was just paying the lien, paying my note on that mortgage. So consequently, I was getting a double dip by living there. I'm only paying, not paying rent, but just paying my loan off. So I did that, and I kept moving, I kept moving, I kept moving, and I've lived in some of the nicest properties in the U.S. and golf courses and all over because of doing it that way. So I promised her I'm not going to do that anymore for a while in terms of moving so much.
Yeah, I have friends in New York, and we have relatives. Most of us have relatives. Most people in the Caribbean have relatives in New York, Florida, or even mainly on the eastern seaboard. And you often hear about the issue of your credit rating, and they want to
Hmm.
get property, but they have to fix their credit. What
Hmm.
insight can you give and advice you can give on that to help you get in the property ladder?
But again, credit is ultra important in the US. Ultra important. If you have a high credit score, credit equals to me, credit equals cash. If you have a credit score runs anywhere between 400 and 850. So if you're borderline of 600, you can get money, you can borrow money, but it's at a high interest. When I was doing my in the heyday of my property flipping, my credit score was like 780, 750. I can make a phone call and get money because of my credit score. So credit is important, and the one way you can start off in the US is to get a secured credit card. You get a secured credit card. That means a credit card where you give the bank $500, they give you a Visa for five. So you're basically using your money, but then you have to pay it on time every month and build that history, and that's how you build your
And,
credit report over here. And so that you could, yeah.
and if you were to advise them on a potential strategy, you did primarily flipping. This is Susie Charles. She moved to New
Hmm.
York, won a green card lottery. She's working in accounting, in an apartment somewhere on North Strand in Brooklyn, not knocking Brooklyn
Hmm.
at all. But,
No.
and she wants that property. What advice would you give her in terms of maybe where to start looking, what strategy she could probably do, both looking at the novelty of it or being a novice, as well as
Hmm.
maybe what might give the best return, in future years to come.
Well, I would say you find a lot of realtors don't deal in distressed property. You find a good realtor who deals with distressed properties. Now, all the banks have what you call REO departments, real estate owned. And banks are not in the business of real estate. Banks in the business of money, cash. But they unfortunately, they take back some properties and they have a portfolio called REOs, real estate owned. And they segment them out to different realtors who primarily focus in that vicinity. So I'd find a realtor who owns in distressed properties from the banks. These are properties that need repair, and you can get them at substantially good discounts. You start there, and then most good realtors know a good, not really a contractor, maybe a handyman, someone who can do a lot of things. So you don't have to go through all the different trades. You can get one guy who can paint the house for you, can repair the carpet or change the tile, or even repair the tile, or change the kitchen cupboards. Just things. Just find again, associate yourself with a realtor who does distressed property, and that's where you start. Because then if you're a novice, you have no idea where to start. But a realtor who that's his job every day, he'll tell you, okay, go on so and so avenue, on Jamaica Avenue in New York, and you'll find there's a property in this address. Take a look at it. There's no one in there. Walk around and see what you think. Then you can buy that. Again, not the banks wouldn't lend you money to buy distressed property. Again, you have to go through private means, which is different in the States. Banks will not give you money to buy distressed property. You have to deal. People like me, there are a lot of us, people like me, who made substantial living on distressed property. Because again, you make money when you buy, not when you sell. You do your research, you know what you're buying for, you know what the repair value is, and then you know what the ARV, the after repair value. So when you combine these three together, before you even finish the completion of the repairs, you know you've made money because you bought it right.
So if the bank won't give you money for distressed properties, where would somebody starting off who probably can't afford a typical mortgage go? So your credit is good, but you can't afford
Mm-hmm.
a bank loan mortgage. How do you find these hard money lenders, legal hard money lenders, where they won't break your arm
Yeah.
or break your
Yeah.
foot when they come to collect the money?
You, no, well, it's called hard money, but it's not as bad as it sounds because they basically give you money at a high, they take a bigger risk because the house has to be repaired. But what they do, they give you the money. You probably have to come up with a little bit more down payment. You probably have to come up with 20%. Let's say you want to borrow again 100,000, you have to come up with $20,000 of your own, and then so what you normally do is either get a friend or pull up with two or three people. Start small. Don't start like a big time investor. Start small. You get a friend's family, whatever. If you're in a church because that's the big thing right now. People want to invest in real estate. So you bring two or three buddies together. Instead of 20 grand, you each come up with a little less than 10 each. You can put it on a credit card, whatever. So and you pull. I've bought property with a credit card before. Okay, I bought property with a credit card before. The down payment. I had two $20,000 credit cards, and I needed about 30 grand. Put 15 and 15, went to the bank, took it out, put it in a cashier's check, or wired the money from a credit card. So you can be very, very creative in this field. You don't need to have a job to get a distressed property. Just the ability to repay on time, but it has to be timed. If it's a 90-day project, it better not go 6 months because you're gonna run out of money if you're on a tight budget.
Looking back on your career and your time as a solution immigrant, and of course, establishing a parallel with somebody now, you finishing your career, retiring, and somebody just starting off. What advice would you give them?
Mhm.
Just parting shots. What advice would you give to them? Anything. What advice would you give to them?
I would say have a team. Have a team. Don't go alone. If you're starting up, you have to have people around you. Number one, you gotta have people with money. Period. I mean, you don't hang around people who just like. I have a saying that go. And my wife doesn't like me to say that, but I told her that I don't hang around anybody that has a job, a 9 to 5 job, and it's nothing personal. If you have a 9 to 5 job, you don't have the mindset like I do. Okay, to know how to think outside the box, to be creative, because all you consume with is going to that job every day, 9 to 5, and being that have that slave mentality and not being negative again. I'm not knocking anybody. Everyone is not like me or it's not anybody else. But you have to associate yourself with people who do what you do. And there are lots of groups and associations. Like I go to a lot of networking groups, and everybody there is the same thing. We all in the property flipping game. Okay. So we feed off each other. We learn from each other. We share information. If I have a hard money lender, say, man, this guy is only 6%. Say, man, but my guy is 4.5%. So give me his number. Here's his card. Or say, Martin, you have a contractor who does good numbers. Or you have a good tiler. You have an electrician. So we network. It's a small band of, it's a small group, but that's where you find your core. It's in networking. Now, because of COVID, that's not as it used to be, but it's still online. I still attend what it's called RIAs, REIA, Real Estate Investment Groups. You can go to Google. You're not Google. You can go on Amazon on Facebook, and Facebook Real Estate Investment Groups, and you'll see there's a plethora of them, and you just join them. And people are, so I'm in a couple of them. I share information. I share my knowledge, because if you have knowledge is no good if you don't share it. Okay. Because the same person you share it to can say, hey, I have an uncle who's got some money. He's retired. He needs to invest his money. You don't know how many times I've got calls like that. People I don't even know, just by being genuine and sharing. Then sure, you have a meeting, you collaborate, but you always substantiate everything and you back up his cash with a deed. You give him value in the property. So it's a creative game. It's not a normal game. It's very creative. But team up. That's the key. The key is team up. Don't be greedy. Share the knowledge, share the wealth. Instead of making 40 grand, make 10. The first one. You may not make a lot, but if you do that 2 or 3 times in a year, at the end of the year, now in 2022, you start your own now with your own cash flow by doing 3 smaller deals. Now you can do your own deal. Exactly.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. Martin, I want to thank you for sharing your experience and the wealth of knowledge that you have. Having never worked for anyone in your life, and starting your career and building your business through property development, specifically flipping. Some of the things that you've said really resonated, which we've probably brought up, in previous episodes. One of the first things is obviously teaming up, getting a partner if you can't go alone. And you added a new dimension. You said church. I never thought of that, looking for a partner in church. Especially when you're an immigrant in a foreign country, which probably is your new home. If you can get that network, friends, family, fellow churchgoers, probably something you can get your foot in that way. Secondly, you spoke about buying below market value, which is it's a key pillar for success, because it means then you have more wiggle room when it comes to your selling price. And thirdly, establishing that network through sharing information, sharing resources goes a long way, sometimes much, much further than we can ever imagine. So Martin, I want to join you in encouraging, our people, in first world, quote unquote, first world countries. We know it's challenging for them, but hopefully, through this podcast and some of what you said, some of your wisdom, they could actually get their foot on that property ladder in a step to help them get to their financial freedom goal. So this was our episode 5 in our Caribbean Property Investing podcast. As we said before, you can see us on all major podcasts, as well as all major social media platforms, and of course, CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com. Until next time, until next show, we're out.
Congratulations and thank you for tuning in to the Caribbean's first property investing podcast. We want to help Caribbean people create wealth and achieve financial freedom through property investing. Our show provides general advice based on personal experiences and is for educational purposes only. For more information, resources, and past episodes, visit us at CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com. Remember to click the subscribe button so you never miss a show. Let's go.